awaydaysbeer.com. Proud to partner with Talking Town. For only $14.99, grab your ITFC Legends Pack from The Beat to Hoppy Robson to Brazil's Best and Pablo's Pal. Whatever you need, whatever you want. ITFC Legends Pack, $14.99 at awaydaysbeer.com. Grab it today. MassCreations are proud partners of Talking Town. High quality web and software development. From web development to SEO and everything in between, make your vision a reality with MassCreations. Call 07896 904 571 or visit masscreations.co.uk or email info@masscreations.co.uk. MassCreations, proud partners of Talking Town. Don't forget, tell them you came from Talking Town to get 10% off. Best Burger in Stowmarket, proud partners of Talking Town. Call 01449 680 058 to book a table today.
Hi everyone, welcome along to Talking Town Live. Don't forget you can catch us in the week as well on demand on all audio platforms. So great to have you along. I'm Kate Riley, standing in for the Gov, Martin, who's sadly failed a late fitness test today. So I've come off the subs bench and just ever so honoured and proud to be anchoring the show today. So great to have so many of you with us online already. And of course, I can't wait to read your comments throughout the week as well. All right, we've got a really special guest, an absolute legend of Ipswich Town Football Club coming up later. But without further ado, let me introduce to you the one and only Cruncher.
Well, I'd rather look at you, Kate, than Martin all day long. I didn't know you were going to be on screen. I thought he might be starting, and then you popped up.
Ah, well, it's great to have you with us. Thanks very much for stepping in as well.
Yes,
so
you know me, always available.
Now you're excited about the guest, aren't you?
Yeah, I was talking to you this morning, and I always remember this guy. We were talking to him in the green room. I always remember him, and so do you. He's normally wearing a headband, isn't he? Because he's been battered by some centre forward elbow him on the head. But yeah, really, he was a great guy, wasn't he? Great player, Hall of Famer, Canadian Hall of Famer as well. So yeah,
when I look
now,
I look back, I sort of think of memories of our guest, and I maybe want to be bold and say he was like our last proper captain. And I mean that in terms of ambassador on the pitch and ambassador off the pitch.
I think you've been a bit harsh there on Chambers. I think Luke Chambers.
Sorry, Chamber.
Yeah, Luke Chambers was a good ambassador. Yeah, I know what you mean. He was a really good leader, this guy. And like I said, we could do with someone like him now, couldn't we? Really?
We could. A good thing he deals with soccer development these days. Maybe he's got some names that we can recruit at Town these days. All right, without further ado, let's welcome in our next co-host.
Hi, how you doing?
How you doing, Matt?
Good, good. Tell me more about this Singapore flower dome you're in. That looked an impressive.
Oh, honestly, it could be one of the wonders of the world. It's absolutely incredible. So we'll get you a ticket when you come over.
Was it aircon? It looked warm in there. Was it aircon?
Yeah, it was aircon. So basically, it's just so hot in the afternoons that that's somewhere we can go, and it feels like home.
Yeah, good. Have they got a little British tea room on the side though? That's what you expect of these things, isn't it?
Well, they do, but these days everything's all food and coffee shops are closed because of COVID. So yeah, but when you're over, treat you to some scone and a cup of tea.
Yeah.
How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
How do you like your scones, Matt? How do you like your scones? How do you like your scones?
Well, I'm not really picky, as they come.
See, I don't like them with currants in.
Yeah. No, I don't mind those.
Currants in the bin.
No.
Currants
Don't
in the bin.
start this debate.
Anyway, Matt's had a nice haircut. Have you had a haircut?
Yeah. Nice little trim now. Little trim. Got Jason De Vos on the show, people. Got to be looking your best.
Yeah, Matt, what are your memories of Jason?
Just that, I mean, I've seen it loads on the show. Like the Joe Royle era was one of my favourites, and I've often thought back during the Paul Lambert era, which was really boring for me, really unentertaining, how entertaining the Joe Royle era was. And Jason was obviously his captain and then morphed into the Jim Magilton era. But I mean, look, the DVD of one of the seasons was called The Entertainers, wasn't it? And that's what it was. So I do hope we can get back to that, that sort of like we were saying to him in the green room earlier, the 5-1 against Sheffield United, the 6-0 against Nottingham Forest. We don't score a lot of goals anymore. It'd be good to get back to that.
You didn't even have a shot,
yeah,
man.
Such wonderful memories. Yeah. All right, let's introduce him properly. Former captain, ITFC Hall of Famer, also named in the all-time Canada men's 11 football team as well. He's currently the Director of Development at the Canadian Soccer Association. All-round hero, I think you can agree with that. It's Jason De Vos.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Kate. Depends on where you are in the world, I guess. But I should come on here more often. You can make me feel good about myself. It's a great start to the day for me here in Canada.
It's truly a global show, this, isn't it? Singapore,
I guess
Canada,
so. I guess so. Well, thanks for having me to start with. It's great to be here and to talk about Town and share the passion that I have for the club, and I know all of you and the fans have. So I'm really looking forward to this, and thanks for the invite.
Go on then. We've shared with you just how exciting it was being a fan watching you. I sent one of your goals to Rich earlier on today. I was in the South Stand when you scored. Garvin with the free kick, and you headed it in. And it was against Cardiff City, wasn't Cruncher? And
unfortunately, we lost, Kate, 2-1 in that game.
Well, we did, but it was a great goal, and that's what we loved about you, Jason, is that you were an amazing defender, and yet you would score all these amazing headers as well.
I think it's a lost art now, I guess. Maybe it's just a generational thing, but it was certainly something that I always prided myself on and felt it was a real asset. I say to defenders that I work with now here in Canada, your job is to keep a clean sheet. You start the game with a clean sheet. If you finish the game with a clean sheet, you've done your job. But if you can do anything at the other end of the pitch and help out offensively, that's just a bonus. And that's something that I felt I was able to do on occasion. Maybe not as often as I would have liked, but certainly on occasion. And I was very fortunate as well, because I played with some incredible craftsmen through that era. I start with someone like Jim Magilton. His delivery from set pieces was absolutely superb. You can throw Darren Curry in there as well. Kevin Horlock, although I'm loath to say nice things about Kevin Horlock. He was my roommate at Town for many, many years and is still a good friend and just a wonderful sense of humor. And Owen Garvin's another one. So I was very lucky that the service was always very good. So I always knew that if I could get myself in the right place, I'd have half a chance of creating something.
What was your fondest memory of Town? There seemed to be a fair few to choose from.
Yeah, it's really hard to choose. I'll be honest, because I have nothing but good memories from my time at Town, from going down there and meeting Joe Royle and just the backstory on that. When I left Wigan, we'd had a reasonably successful season at Wigan and just missed out on the playoffs, and contractual negotiations with the former chairman there were always challenging. It's probably the best way to put it. So I was available to leave on a free transfer. And David Hodgson was the man that brought me to the UK. He was the manager at Darlington, and he was also my agent prior to being the manager at Darlington. So on every move that I had, or every opportunity I had to move to a new club, I would call Hodgie up and ask him for his perspective and his thoughts. And when I was leaving Wigan, I had probably 7 or 8 clubs in the championship that I could go to. And so I called him up and I started talking to him and saying, look, these are my options. I want to get your perspective. What do you think? And I got to Ipswich and he said, stop right there, get in your car, drive to Ipswich, sign whatever they put in front of you. You'll absolutely love it there. It is a proper football club. And that's what I did. I got my car, I drove to Ipswich, and I met with Joe, and Joe and I and my agent, we jumped in his car and he drove me around town. And he took me out to his house and he talked to me about what he was trying to do at the club. And I mean, it took 5 minutes to convince me that this was the place for me. And I've said many times since, it had a very much a family feel to it, from David Sheepshank straight down through to the kit man and the ladies preparing the lunches and the breakfast at the training ground. I mean, everyone was like family, and it really felt like home to me. So it was a really great way for me to finish off my playing career. And if I could go back and do it over again, I would have liked to have landed there as a 16-year-old and had the opportunity to work my way through the academy with the great staff that are there. Many of the coaches there were former teammates of mine or were apprentices. I know Adam Ate is still in charge of one of the youth teams there, and he was a YT when I was at Town. So it has a family feel to it, and I think that's one of the things that I love most about the club.
What was the reaction back home when you said, I'm signing for Ipswich?
I don't know. It was that long ago. We didn't have the internet, I think, back then. But, I think the reaction was that, I needed to keep playing at a high level. And Ipswich, at the time, were a very, very strong championship club. And I think that first year, 2004, 2005, where we just missed out on automatic promotion, lost to West Ham in the playoffs. The club was on the verge of getting back to the Premier League, and rightly so. I still look back on that season with a lot of remorse, because you look at every single result along the way, every dropped point, and question where it came from and what happened and what if and what would have been. But it's a bit futile to do that. But at the end of the day, you still do, because that's what you want to achieve. And so, when I moved from Wigan to Ipswich, I think many people viewed it as another stepping stone in my career that was hopefully going to help Canada get back to the World Cup for the first time. But it was a real challenge for me, for sure. The international travel is certainly back then was a real challenge. I remember my first year at Ipswich, I got to the end of the season and I was just exhausted and I was struggling with fatigue from all the international travel, and I knew that I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep traveling back to play internationals for Canada, and so I had to make a choice about whether I would continue to compromise my health and well-being. I knew that I wasn't going to be playing football for another 6 years, which ultimately at the end of the World Cup qualifying cycle, I knew that it would be that long before the next World Cup, and I didn't want to stand in anybody's way, any of the young Canadian kids coming through. So I decided to step down and focus on playing for Ipswich. And it was a good decision. It was the right decision for me and my health and my family. And I think it was the right decision for Town as well, because hopefully they got the best out of me while I was on my last stages of my career.
I've got a question. Go on, Matt.
Go on, Mitch. You go for it.
I've got a question from Gary Slade for you, Jason. So he says, what was the sliding door moment that caused us to fall away in 04-05? Was it Sheffield Kuki's injury in February the sole reason we weren't able to see it through? Because I think he missed 4 games, didn't he? He got injured against Leicester. And I think we lost to Wigan, I think, away. I think Watford QPR at home as well. So it was sort of, we signed Scowcroft, didn't we? And he didn't really work out.
Well, it's funny. It's never ever one thing. It's never just that thing. But I would say Shefke's injury was a major contributing factor for sure. you know, if you look at that team, if you look at that squad of players, there was great chemistry amongst that group. Shefke and Benty, the two of them together were almost unplayable. They had power, they had pace, they had strength, they could win things in the air, they could hold the ball up, they could finish, they could beat you in behind, they could play to feet. You know, they had everything as a partnership. And then you had people like Jim and Kevin in behind them, just feeding them all day. And so, you know, you look at that, and losing one component of that chemistry makes it really, really difficult. And Scully was a great player for Town, and a great guy as well. But he was different from Shefke. So, you know, not having that same chemistry with Darren and the others was maybe challenging for sure.
Because when you look, it was just literally, it was just like 1 point, wasn't it? I think we missed out, and you think it was them four. It was so close, wasn't it? Them 4 games. I think I looked the other day, Matt. I think we only won 1 out of the last 7 games. You think if we'd have won one of them games. I remember went to Leeds away. I think Darren Curry missed. We've had Darren on the show before. He missed an absolute sitter. He did.
You probably told him as well.
Yeah, we did tell him.
what was Shefke like in the dressing room, Jason? I'd imagine he was a big character, was he not?
He's a huge character. Shefke's a big teddy bear. Like, he really is. He's hard as nails, but he's a really good human being. He's a good guy. And you know, I think when I look back on my time at Town, what I realized how fortunate I was. You know, in hindsight, maybe it was just, you know, intuition, and it was a good decision to come to the club. But I was really lucky because I came into a club that had really good people there. And I think Joe deserves a lot of credit for that, for sure. But I think Jim does as well. You know, I was lucky to work with Jim, and I've got immense respect for him. He was a teammate first. Well, he was an opponent first. Then he was a teammate.
What was he like to play against? What was he like to play against? Because I reckon you must have earache, because he never shuts up, does he?
Well, to play against him, it's hard to play against Jim because he's such a good passer of the football. I would argue probably the best passer of football I've ever played with. And I hope he doesn't see this, because his ego is just going to go through the roof. But Jim was special. There's no question about that. I remember we scored a goal. I think it was away to QPR, and Jim played a pass in midfield, and I think it was to Matt Richards, if my memory serves me. My memory's not great. I've had a lot of footballs over the years, but I think it was to Matt Richards, and Matt scored. And I think Jim was the only person in the stadium that saw the pass and played it. And I remember running up to him and saying that, like, you're the only person that saw that. You know, that was amazing. And everyone else is off celebrating the goal. And Jim wasn't. I think it was probably because he didn't want to run that far. Like, he didn't like running very much, but he was just a special player and a special person. And I was very fortunate, I think, in my time at Town to play alongside him, to learn from him, and then to be his captain and to learn with him through that process. Because I can tell you, going from being a player to being a manager is immensely difficult.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah,
there's no course you can take that'll explain how to do it. You just have to be very lucky to have good people around you, and that's really, really the hard part. So I was very fortunate. I learned so much about leadership through that process, that period of time in my life, and you know, I thank Joe and Jim for the opportunity, and the chairman, David Sheepshanks, for bringing me to the club and giving me that opportunity.
Because you said that this morning, Kate said to me about Jim. Jim was probably obviously the leader of the banter in the dressing room, and then he's gone from like playing one season, and then you start in the next season, he's your manager. How did that transition go?
It was challenging. I can tell you, it was challenging. I'll tell you one of my first memories of playing alongside Jim was I think it was in my first year at Ipswich, and Joe used to read out the team in training on the Friday before we trained, so that everyone knew who was playing in the starting 11 on the Saturday. And I remember he brought everyone together and he read out the team, and Jim wasn't in it, and it was the first time Jim wasn't in the team, and he literally turned on his heel and stormed off the training ground. And I was looking at him, and I was looking at Joe, and I was looking back at Jim walking away. And I said to Joe afterwards, like, are you going to do anything about that? Like, are you okay with that? And he said, Don't worry. He'll go away. He'll have his frustration. He'll get it out of his system. He'll come back. He'll apologize, and everything will be fine. Joe was an unbelievable manager of human beings. He was incredible. He really, really was. And this is something that I think fans don't get the chance to see. And I wish they did. I wish they could see that. But the way that he treated people, how he interacted with people, how he treated his staff, the way that he lifted them up and empowered them, Joe was an absolute mastermind in that. And that was my first memory of working with Jim and Joe is that's what this is all about. My second memory of Jim that really stands out, and this, again, I've learned so much from him over the years. We were playing Leicester away. I can't remember if it was 2004 or 2005, but I know that we drew both games. But we drew this match, and it was a decent game. I mean, Leicester were a good side back then. They're an even better side now, but they were a very good side back then. So a point away at the Walker Stadium wasn't a bad result at all. And Jim and I used to sit towards the front of the bus all the time, and with some of the other senior players. And Jim was sitting on the bus, and he was sitting there looking out the window, and he was like miserable, chewing a wasp. He was just, I could see he was so angry. So I sat down next to him, and I said, "Hey, what's up? This is a good result. We should be okay with this, and should be fine." And he said, "Wasn't good enough." He said it just wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough, and I've got to be better. And for me, what really dawned on me then is like, this guy at the age of, I think Jim was 35, 36, and certainly towards the end of his playing days, even at that age, at that stage of his career, he still wanted to be the best on the pitch in every game, in every training session. And that level of professionalism is, I think, what's allowed him to carry on into management and to make that really difficult transition. But it wasn't easy, and it's not easy. There were a lot of times where I would be in his office, me and him having a chat about things and trying to get him to understand the player's perspective. And then you go into the dressing room and then you have that same conversation with the players and try to get them to see Jim's perspective and what the manager's looking for us to try and do. So it was challenging, but it was a great experience, and one that I wish Joe would have been given more time, and I wish Jim would have been given more time. I feel a lot of times football clubs make snap decisions based on emotion rather than on logic and thinking about what is in the long-term best interest of the organization. You see it over and over again. It's not just at Ipswich Town. It's at every professional football club in the world. They hire and fire managers, and it's a merry-go-round. But what they need time. They need time to bring in the right people, to work with those people, to get them on the same page and to bring out the best in them. And only then should they really be judged. And I feel both Joe and Jim weren't given enough time to implement the things that they wanted to implement.
I think with Joe, it was hard, wasn't it? Because you got the 04-05 season when we lost to West Ham, and then I've wrote down here, you lost Kelvin Davis, Benji went, Tommy Miller,
Tommy Miller.
Ben Miller and Kookie. You've probably lost over 50 goals there. And you had Sam Parkin come in, didn't we? We had Nicky Forster come in. I looked that season, Nicky Forster was top goal scorer, and he got 7 goals.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah.
It's difficult.
It's very hard, and unfortunately, I think the life of a fan is that you want your team to win every game, to score 5 goals a game, to never concede, and to win the league every season. And if that doesn't happen, it's disappointment. I mean, it's almost like an insufferable existence where you're always in some constant state of anxiety about the state of your team. Friends of mine are going through it right now here in Canada. The Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens are going to Game 7. Kate, you'll know this better than the others, I'm sure.
Having covered Game 7 when it went to when I covered NBA and MLB and those late nights, they were hard.
So the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'm a Toronto boy. I'm from Ontario, the province where Toronto's based, and they haven't won the Stanley Cup in over 50 years, coming up to 60 years. And yet every Toronto Maple Leafs fan thinks this is going to be the year. This is when they're going to do it. And now they're going to Game 7. So the amount of anxiety that my friend group is experiencing right now is off the charts. And I know from talking to Ipswich Town fans over the years that they're experiencing those same emotions, that all they want is to see Town back in the Premier League. There's a lot of work that needs to go into getting them there from where we are now. And that's going to take time. And unfortunately, there's no quick fix. There's no immediate Band-Aid that you can put on it to make things better. It just takes time. So I'm hopeful that Cookie is going to be given the time that he needs to build a squad that can get out of League One into the championship and then challenge in the championship and get out of the championship, because ultimately that's what it takes to succeed long term.
Yeah, I mean, getting to the championship is the first hurdle, isn't it? Easier said than done, Jason. Right? I mean,
it is,
and that transition, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this to people in Canada who maybe don't understand the competitiveness of the championship. I'd argue that the championship is one of the top 10 leagues in the world. It's one of the most difficult leagues in the world to get out of. Mm-hmm. And when you get to the final stages, if you're not fortunate enough to qualify and go up via promotion in the automatic places, the amount of pressure that's on players in the playoffs is off the charts. And dealing with that pressure alone is a whole other skill set that many players don't develop over the years, and many managers don't understand or don't realize is a vastly underrated skill set, is the ability to perform under pressure in those types of situations. I think they say that the championship playoff final is the most lucrative game of football in the world. And it is. And if you think about that, you think about the amount of pressure that's on the players, it really is a challenging league to get out of, for sure.
Yeah, and every year the prize is so much more as well. So I can't imagine what a pressure cooker that environment is. Got a question from Ben Moore, who's watching us live. He said, who is the best centre-back partner you ever had, Jason?
Oh, that's a great question.
At Town.
Okay, so I'll preface this by saying the best that I ever had anywhere was Matt Jackson at Wigan. So, and Town fans might not like that because Matt Jackson is a former Norwich player. But Jacko and I think we were cut from the same cloth. He's one of the only players I think in the football league that I'm faster than. Which is saying something. I was the pacey center half in that partnership, but we just had like a telepathic understanding, and we just knew exactly where each other was going to be and where we needed to be. And we had John Filan behind us in goal, and that sort of triangle of players was arguably the best that I've ever played in. At Town, again, I played with some great players. I think Richard Naylor and Fabian Wilness were the two that I spent the most time playing with. And you know, if you look at Bam Bam, you look at his career, it's an incredible career that he's had. And he's played in multiple positions and succeeded in multiple positions. So for him to be able to transition and be a center half, which is a lot more about reading the game and understanding positioning than it is about technique or skill sets. I think he transitioned to that really, really well. And we had a good relationship. We worked well together. Fabian, the same. I mean, Fabian was so versatile and was able to play multiple positions and do it really, really well. You know, he didn't spend a lot of time playing as a center half, but you know, when he did, it looked like he'd been there for 5-10 years. So, and I think that's a credit to him as a professional. So I would say at Town, those are the two that really stand out for me as being the ones that I had the easiest time playing alongside of, for sure.
I've got one for you. Mark Fish. Yep. Mark Fish.
I never played alongside Mark Fish. He wasn't
not playing that game of QPR, the 45 minutes.
Well, yeah. So he I didn't have a long time playing with him, so that's probably how I would explain it. Yeah, it's not enough of a sample size is probably the best way to put it.
He was a good player, wasn't he? He was a good player at Charlton, Jason, and at Bolton. But I think he had a bad injury, didn't he? And I think he came. Was he on loan? I think he came on loan. I remember the game. He played 45 minutes and he never played again.
Yeah, I think it was an injury issue. From if memory serves me, again, my memory is not great because I've headed so many footballs over the years. I tell everyone that I can't remember what I had for
That's an
breakfast.
interesting thing when you say about heading the ball. So obviously, dementia in football now is a really big thing, isn't it? Do you think? Look, you've seen players. Obviously, Jeff Aspinall, he sort of passed away through it, and they're on about in youth soccer stopping heading. What do you think of that?
That's a great question. And I talk to our medical committee here in Canada about this all the time. The reality is we don't know. There isn't enough evidence, conclusive evidence to say that the heading of a football, should be banned in youth football, for example. I do know from my own experiences that I had multiple undiagnosed concussions. The mindset of just get on with it and tough it out was prevalent in my playing days, for sure. Like the notion that you were going to come off the pitch was unheard of. Like there's absolutely no way. I remember my first game, and I can't remember if it was 2007, 2006, 2008, could have been one of those years. I believe it was Cardiff that we were playing at home. First game of the season. And I tackled a player right in the touchline, and I felt and heard my ribs crack, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get any air into my lungs. But when I tackled him, he sort of flipped up with his knees in the air, and I landed on my side on top of his knees. And I felt all the wind go out of my lungs, but I wasn't, and it was right in front of the north stand as well. So there's no chance that I'm going to do anything but get up and run back into position. So I'm doing that, and I can't breathe. I can't get any oxygen into my lungs, and I feel like I'm going to pass out. So I run up as quick as I can. I get alongside Bam Bam, and I'm like, Bam Bam, I can't breathe. I can't get the doctor. He's looking at me like, well, what do you want me to do? Just suck it up and get on with it. So I managed to kind of carry on and finish off the half. And I got to half, and I'm in absolute agony. Like I can't even move. And when you come into the dressing room at Town, as soon as you come in the dressing room, if you turn right, you'll go into the treatment area. And so I didn't even go into the dressing room. I literally went in straight into the treatment area. And I said to the physio, Dave and Matt, I said, guys, I think I've broken my ribs. I'm in absolute agony. I can't breathe. I can't, is there anything that you can do? So the doctor was there. Doc said, there's really not a lot we can do. We can't really even tell if they're broken. We can look at them. They're obviously very tender. You're in a lot of pain. But there's not much we can do. So I said, okay, give me as much painkillers as you're legally allowed to give me. And I'm going to go out and finish off the game and play. And so I played the second half, and Alan Lee was playing for Cardiff at the time. And Alan is a great friend of mine now. And obviously he's had a great career at Ipswich. And we're hanging on the end of the game, hanging on for dear life. And they're launching the ball in the box. I've gone up for a header with Big Al, and he's done that one where he's just kind of like ducked, and I've gone like that and landed on my back in the 18-yard box. And honestly, I saw stars. Like there was like knives in my back. It was that painful. Physio comes out and get through the game. We end up getting a result. And I go in and I go to the hospital afterwards, and the doctor comes out with the x-rays. He puts the x-rays up in the machine. He says, yeah, no, you're good. You're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. I said, hang on a second, doc. I've seen enough x-rays in my life to know that those 3 ribs that are like that and are not connecting where they're supposed to connecting, that's not normal. He says, oh, no. Yeah, no, you've broken 3 ribs, but you didn't puncture your lungs. So you're going to be fine. So the issues that you go through as a footballer are many, but I go back to the experience that I had playing alongside those players and the diagnosis of injuries and what have you. I think there's a much different mindset now than there was 10, 15 years ago when I played, for sure. And I do think that players are exceptionally well cared for and looked after. And I think that has to be the way it is. But to go back to your original question, I know it's been a long one. Do I believe that we should ban heading in youth football? I think we need more evidence and more support, and it needs to be a medical decision. It shouldn't be a technical decision where a technical person says, yeah, I don't think we need to do this at this age. It needs to come from the medical community, because we need to keep kids safe first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, in the intro, we said I've got this mental image that's just synonymous of you playing with a head bandage. And that's just images that we just don't see these days.
Yeah, maybe because center halves are smarter and they don't put their head in where they're not supposed to anymore. But yeah, I've certainly got a few photos of my time playing for Town and other clubs where there's blood on my jersey, there's bandages wrapped around my head, and what have you. I always say to people, I don't have these scars on my head from shaving, but it seems to be a different way these days in football, for sure.
What was Paul Jewell like as a gaffer for you then, Jason? Obviously, he came to Town. It was, not the greatest time for him, but I mean, I remember back to Friday night at Portman Road. You remember this, Rich, maybe Kate, where you played us off the park and beat us 3-1. I think you were like 2 up at half time. It was like, I don't know, it was like Jimmy Bullard was in the team, Alan Mann. That was a really good away display, that. Really impressive.
That team was very, very good. And I give Paul a lot of credit, because Paul built that team. When I joined Wigan, they were in what's now League One, Division 2 at the time. And, they had a reputation as being a very ambitious club that wanted to get to the championship and wanted to get even further than that. But if I look at the team that I started with to the team that I left to join Town, pretty much every player that was there was brought into the club by Paul and his staff and his team of scouts. So exceptionally good at identifying players, very good at getting those players to play the way he wants them to play. And I had a good relationship with Paul. I got on well with him. He made me captain after my first year there. Arian Dazoo left to join, I believe, Portsmouth it was. But he was the captain when I started, and then Paul made me the skipper. And so I had a good relationship with him, but it was always challenging because he's got such a wicked sense of humor, and you never really know where you stand with him. But he was always good to me, and he did a very good job at Wigan. And when he joined Town, I was really curious to see how it would go, because I wasn't sure if Paul's personality would fit the ethos of the club or the family feel of the club. So it was interesting. I mean, I can't comment on his time at Town because I wasn't there, so I won't. I think it's unfair to do that, but I had a very good working relationship with Paul. I had a lot of respect for him as a manager. I thought he was excellent. He obviously got Wigan to the Premier League and kept them there for many years and did a very, very good job there. So, it just didn't work out at Town for one reason or another. And that happens. It happens in football. And I think a lot of it is due to factors that are beyond the control of anyone involved. Whether it's the chairman, whether it's the existing staff that are already there, whether it's the manager himself coming in. I think there are a lot of factors to take into consideration when you're evaluating performance. I remember doing one of my UEFA courses, and Howard Wilkinson said, the average tenure of a manager now is about 8 months. Like, what are you going to be able to do in 8 months, really, as a manager? Like, you have to focus on, how do I win today? I got to win in the next 8 months just to keep my job. Because if you lose your job, Howard said that there's a 50% chance you'll never get another job in football. Those are the statistics. So, when you look at long-term approaches to development at a club, no one's doing that. No one's saying, we're going to hire this manager because we know he's the right human being. He's the right person. He's the right character. We're going to give him 5 years. We're not going to fire him for 5 years. He's got a 5-year window to get this right. That doesn't happen in football. And I wish it did, because I genuinely believe that the first club that does that is going to go, oh, actually, if they hire the right person, this has completely revolutionized our entire football club and put us on the path.
You look at David Moyes. You look at David Moyes when he went to Man United. They give him a 6-year contract. He was gone in 6 months. Alan Pardew, Jason, got an 8-year contract at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And you think you're not going to be there for 8 years. They must be
Paul
crazy.
Lambert got what? Got a
Yeah,
5-year
Paul Lambert got
contract.
a 5-year extension in Town. That went well, Kate.
No comment.
I guess the
What
only
was
guy
Jimmy
who's
Bullard?
managed it, the only
What was
guy who's
Jimmy
managed it,
Bullard?
which is probably Sean Dyche, isn't it, at Burnley?
Yeah.
He's the only one who's really been given that time that you talk about, Jason.
Yeah,
isn't it?
now
And
it'll be
he's really
different.
great
Now they've
dividends
got
for them.
their Americans come in there, haven't they? They've come in, and will they stick with him? What do you think to the new takeover at Town, Jason? Do you know anything about the guys that have taken over at Town?
I don't, unfortunately, but I did actually get a message from an old high school friend of mine who reached out randomly to say that a good friend of his is one of the new owners. So I said, well, listen, if he wants to have a chat about the history of the club and my experiences there, give him my number, give him my email. I'm happy to have a chat with him. So I don't, I mean, like everyone else, I'm excited about the possibility. Trying to sort of temper the expectations and say, let's give it some time. Let's not get carried away. It's, the game, the English game is rife with stories of takeovers and everyone thinks we're going to be in the Premier League inside 2 years. And it generally doesn't work that way. It generally takes a little bit of time, but I'm excited. I'm excited about the future. I know the existing staff at Town. I played with Paul Cook for a short period of time at Wigan, so I know who he is and I know what he's about. He was an excellent player, by the way, very, very good. I enjoyed my time with Cookie, and he's a good person as well. Gary Roberts obviously was a teammate of mine. I reached out to him as soon as he was announced and congratulated him, and he responded right away. And Franny Jeffers was there as a lone player and did very well for us on the pitch. So, I'm hopeful, I'm confident, I'm excited. I want to see how they do, but I also want to say, like, let's give them a bit of time. It might not happen in year one. It might be year two, but if we pull the exit chute on year one and don't give them year two, we're never going to know that. So it's tough. It's hard because I feel the fans' frustration. I feel their pain, even over here across the Atlantic.
What kind of guy is Paul Cook like? Give us a little taste of what he's like in the dressing room, Jason. He seems a very jovial character. He's got that kind of scout.
Great sense of humor, good banter. I mean, in some ways, I don't like saying typical, but he's got that Scouse sense of humor, and he's got that ability to just bring some humor to an environment, to a situation, put things in perspective. But he was, my time with Cookie wasn't that long. It was only a period of a couple months, but good player, very good player, understood the game very well, leader on the pitch as a player for sure. But, obviously as a manager, I don't have any experience working with him in that capacity, but I could see, when you look back on your playing career and you look at players who you played alongside, some of them you'd be like, not in a million years are they ever going to be a manager. They're not a student of the game. And then there's others like Jim, who was just like, they have a PhD in football, and you just know they're going to be able to transfer that to a leadership role within the game on the management side of things. And I would put Cookie in that book as well. Like, very, very knowledgeable football person.
Got a question for you, Jason. You've obviously been a captain at several clubs, and I just want to know, are you born a captain, or do you learn to be a captain, or? Yeah,
it's a great question, Kate. I was fortunate in my career. I was captain of club and country in total for about 10 years. And I've said this before, I don't think I was any good at it until the last two. My last 2 years at Town, I think I really finally understood what it means to be a captain and what it means to be a leader. It isn't about being the best player. It's not about being the best at everything. It's not about being serviced by people around you. It's about being in service for other people. And it's about trying to help your teammates be the best version of themselves. It's about trying to help the staff do their jobs and be happy at the end of the day that they've done their very best in whatever their role is. And it could be, Sanilla in the kitchen preparing lunch for the players. How can I help her be the best that she can be at what she does? or it could be, you know, the manager. How can I help him be the best he can be? How can I help the physio do the best job that he can do? And that, I was lucky because when I came to town, I met some really incredible people. Obviously, the chairman, I still call him the chairman, Mr. Sheepshanks, the chairman, Joe Royle, Willie Donachie, the staff there. And then I worked with Jim, Brian Clue at the academy. I had a really good relationship with Brian. And we brought in a gentleman by the name of Watt Nickel. And Watt's now, you know, in his mid 80s, but he was somebody who became a very, very good friend of mine, and someone that I worked with almost daily. And his role was really to kind of help Jim understand the leadership structure within the organization, and to provide feedback from an outside perspective on you know, the character of the players, you know, which players are assets that are underutilized, which players are maybe utilized and are actually more detrimental to the overall group. So the group dynamics piece. And so I would work with him on a daily basis. And and Kate, you'll love this. So my daily routine last 2 years at Ipswich is I would take my daughter to reception at Ipswich High School.
So when we did the Women's World Cup together back in 2015, I was a bit of a fangirl, and I approached Jason saying, "Oh, you never guess, but I'm an Ipswich Town fan, and I reported on you, and I was a junior reporter." And then it transpired that Jason's daughter attended the same school as me. Obviously, very different generations, but still.
Yeah, well, my daughter's turning 19 this year, sadly. So yeah, that's how old
Congrats.
I am.
And that's how old I am.
But so I would take my daughter, drop her off at Ipswich High School, and then I would head into the training ground, Playford Road. And on my drive into the training ground, I would call Watt and have a conversation with him about what today was going to be. What are we going to do today? Which players do we need to speak to? Who's down? Who needs to be picked up? Who's too high? Who needs to be knocked down a little bit? What does the manager need from me? What mindset does the squad need to be in heading into this training week, heading into the game we have coming up on Saturday? You know, that level of preparation, I really learned, and I think sort of, I wouldn't say mastered, because I don't think you ever master that, because I think it's always evolving. But your approach to leadership is really about being in service. There's great TED Talks and presentations around things like this. You know, the boss is the one that's cracking the whip and driving you, and the leader is the one that's lifting you up and pushing you and helping you and pulling you up the mountain, all of these things. It really is true. And in football, you don't see it that often. You see a very much a whip culture where it's almost like driven by fear. And it really creates a toxic culture in the dressing room. And I was very, very fortunate. Again, it's probably why I enjoyed my time at Town so much. That wasn't the case at Ipswich. It really wasn't like that. You know, Joe had created a very supportive, very welcoming environment. And Jim carried on that work. One of my stories that I tell about what I learned from the managers I worked with, one thing I learned from Joe was just the ability to manage people. Joe had an incredible way of letting you know how you played without saying a word. So prior to the dressing rooms being renovated at Ipswich, in the old dressing room, Joe used to get changed right by the door. So no matter where you sat in the dressing room, you had to walk past Joe to get out the door. And if you played really well, Joe would be getting his tie on and his jacket and getting ready, whatever. And he would just look at you and he would just go, "Absolutely brilliant, skipper. Well done. Go have a glass of wine with your wife tonight." And you'd literally float out the door. Like, you'd feel so good about yourself because you know that you got his approval and that you did your job and you did it well. If you didn't play well, he wouldn't say anything. He would just look at you and just go, and that was it. And that was it. And honestly, like you'd feel like you let your dad down or your granddad down. Mm-hmm. But by the time you got to the end of the hallway, your mindset had already shifted to, that's it, right? I'm coming in tomorrow. I'm coming in Sunday morning. I'm going to do some extra work and I'm going to make it right. and I'm gonna put it right with Joe. And that ability to manage people is hugely underrepresented and undervalued in our sport. And I think it's really starting to change. And if, you know, I haven't worked with these people, so I can't speak firsthand, but when you look at people like Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola and Thomas Tuchel, who had the success yesterday, the key to their success is not their tactical genius, although that is certainly a component of it. I believe the key to their success is their ability to manage the human beings that they're working with, the complex human beings that they're working with. And I think when I look back on my time at Town, the success that we did have was a result of the people that were there and the people that were involved. We had strong characters in the dressing room, strong senior players. You know, like Jim, as a senior player in my first 2 years there, was an incredible leader. And then transitioning to be the manager, there was some strong characters there for sure. And I think that's the real difficulty for any manager is, who are my leaders in the dressing room? When I'm not in the dressing room, what are they saying? What are they doing? How are they acting? How are they interacting? How are they behaving? What standards are they setting? I think it was Jim who used to say that any team is only as strong as the four walls of the dressing room. And that is such an apt quote, that, you know, it's about the players themselves taking ownership and really bringing to life the football philosophy of the manager.
I want to ask you about Okay.
No, I just wanted to say thanks so much for all the comments from people watching tonight. Jason, you'll have to watch us back and read the ticker along the bottom. Just a shout out to Roy there, just saying he absolutely loved you when you played for Town. Great player, and you come over as a very knowledgeable person. So of course
that's another person fool then, hey?
Well, this is the Ipswich Town podcast by the fans for the fans. So great comments tonight. Clearly a very popular guest. So sorry, Crunchy, go ahead, mate.
I want to ask you about Kelvin Davis. I was watching some footage this morning of that playoff game when we drew 2-2 at West Ham, and there was a save there. I think it was from possibly Marlon Harewood, but I think he was one of the best goalkeepers I've seen at Town, especially that season. Some of this, I think it was we played West Ham in the league away as well, and he'd done a fantastic save. And he was that team. I think when you're on about leaders, Jason, he was a leader as well. You had Jim, you had Bam Bam, you had Fabian, Shefki Kuki, Tommy Miller. They were all proper men, weren't they? I'd say. Yeah,
and it's interesting because I love that term, Cruncher, proper men. You know, what is a proper man? Who knows these days? But you know, I look at those guys and they were all different, but they all had the same inner burning desire to win.
See, I've got to say, Jason, I'd want them in the trenches with me. yeah. And you know, that's ultimately the mark of a teammate is, you know, do I trust this guy? Does this guy got my back? I remember in my last year at Ipswich, Nick Colgan, who was another absolute gem of a human being who's now coaching as a goalkeeper coach. Nick used to be the second person to arrive at Playford Road after I got there from dropping my daughter off at Ipswich High School. Nick would come in next, and we would have the same conversation every morning. I'd say to him, "Hey, Nick, how's it going?" He said, "I'm living the dream, man. I'm living the dream." And then I would say to him, "Can you believe that they actually pay us to do this?" And he would laugh. And he was just such a good guy and a good human being who was trying to help other people be the best version of themselves. And that piece is really, really important. And that team that I came into in 2004 with Calvin in goal, and we only played together for 1 year because Calvin was part of the exodus that left. Tommy, Shefki, and Benty, who also left the club at the time. Calvin was an absolutely superb goalkeeper. Like, his shot stopping was exceptional. He was so quick. He was so quick to get down to things. And he was really, I think, ahead of his time as well in his ability to play off the deck. Like, he could actually pass a football. Yeah. There's a lot of goalkeepers over the years who that was kind of a nice to have, not a must have. Whereas now I think it's an absolute essential component of the toolkit of any goalkeeper. But Kelvin had that, and he was very comfortable on the ball. You know, so I always knew that if anyone got a shot off,
there's a very good chance Kelvin was going to get there. And that was it's a nice to have as a center half for sure. Anything crossed into the box, I knew that was my job and Bam Bam's job. We had to win that stuff. Kelvin wasn't the biggest goalkeeper. He wasn't 6'5", 6'6", so he wasn't going to come pluck things out of the air. So we knew that, more often than not, unless it's close enough to him that he can come and claim it comfortably, we're going to have to challenge for this and make it really difficult for them to score. But having a solid, strong, reliable goalkeeper behind you, it makes so much difference for defenders, because you now have confidence and that you can always rely on them if push comes to shove. It's a bit of a love-hate relationship with goalkeepers for sure. And one of the running jokes with them all the time, I always used to say, don't worry, lads, as long as we don't let them shoot, we're going to be okay. And give the goalkeepers a bit of grief that way. But that's just the banter that takes place on a football pitch.
You were going to mention earlier, weren't you, Rich? Jimmy Bullard. What can he... I mean, another guy who came to Portman Road and got player of the year, didn't he, Rich? After about what?
13 games.
Was it 13 games?
Jimmy Bullard, yeah. I played with Jimmy at Wigan for several years, and Jimmy's a good example of Paul Jewell's astuteness in the transfer market. So Jimmy came to Wigan from Peterborough United. He started at West Ham, didn't make the grade there, went to Peterborough, and Paul brought him into Wigan from Peterborough. And Jimmy was an absolute star for Wigan, and a very, very, very good player, fit as a butcher's dog. Honestly, this kid could run like you've never seen. And I think back to that Wigan team, we had Jimmy Bullard, Gary Teal, Lee McCulloch. Those three could have been Olympic runners. It was crazy. They were so fit. They made preseason a living hell for everybody else. But Jimmy was an outstanding player. Daft as a brush, absolutely a mad hat, like just crazy, manic. His personality was just off the charts. And
have you seen the clip, Jason, with him? I think you'd left the club then when they're in the Premier League, when he's looking at Duncan Ferguson. Have you seen that, Matt?
Yeah. That was Jimmy.
At him, he's thinking.
But that was Jimmy, and it's interesting. I said earlier about you look at some players and you think they'll never go into management. So Jimmy's probably closest mate at Wigan when we were there together was Mike Flynn, who is now the manager and a very successful manager of Newport, and is doing a really, really good job. And the two of them got on like a house on fire. They were both crazy, great personalities. But you need that in a team, and I think that's one of the arts of management, is knowing how are these people going to fit together? How are they going to work as a group? Who are the steadying forces? Who are the people that are going to calm the waters down? And then who are the guys like Jimmy that are going to fire people up and be crazy and be different? And you need a little bit of that. And every great team has that. They have that chemistry. But unfortunately, nobody has the formula. No one knows what the right balance is of different types of personalities. It just comes from experience. It comes from intuition, and sometimes it comes from luck and just getting lucky and things sort of fit together and the pieces work.
Speaking of past, I was going
to say, Kate, just leading on from there, that's a challenge Paul Cook now has this summer, isn't he? Because we're going to have such a turnaround of players. Yeah. Where do we even start to think I need to bring in, 6, 7, 8 players, and how do they gel together? It's going to be a tough summer for him, I guess.
It's hard, and again, this is why I would urge time and not to get too despondent if things don't work right away, because ultimately, every manager who has ever managed a team will very likely in the honest moments hold their hand up and say, I made mistakes. I got it wrong on this player or that player, or I should have kept this player and I let them go instead. And that's just the nature of football. So I think time is going to be a crucial piece of this, and I know that's not what fans want to hear. It's the worst phrase in football, I guess, is it just takes time, but it really does. And so for Cookie and his staff and his team, obviously I'm sure they're scouring the world to try and find the right players. They may be players that they've worked with in the past. That's often a route that coaches go down because they know what they're getting. They know who they're bringing with them because they've already worked with them. But a lot of times, it's down to the background checks, the work that you do, the people you talk to, the references, the scouts, the network that you have, and the ability of you to build that network and have a reliable network. That's oftentimes going to be the way that you bring players in. So it's going to be an interesting season for sure, an off season. I mean, it's like everyone else. I'm sure you scour the internet looking for news and trying to find the latest story about which players joining, and you have the ups and downs of that as well. Because I can say from firsthand experience, by the time it hits the news, it's probably already happened in a positive way or a negative way. I know that when I joined Ipswich, it wasn't really reported, and it was done very, very quickly. So, I think that's probably the way things still work.
Speaking of scouting, Jason, are there any young Canadians we should be looking at, might sign this summer?
There's this kid called Alfonso Davies who plays for Bayern Munich, who's not bad. Jonathan David, who's at Lille, he's not bad either.
Interestingly, Alfonso Davies has actually got quite a similar background to Shefki Kuchi, in that they were both refugee children, and then they sought refuge, and then they went on to achieve incredible things. Yeah.
Fonzie is an incredible person. He really is. And I've been really fortunate in the last couple of years. I've been able to work with him with our men's team. And what he's achieved is a credit to him and those around him who have helped him on his journey. I said in an interview quite a few years ago that what I love about Fonzie's story is that it's a typically Canadian story. He came to our country to seek refuge. He was living in a refugee camp and had to flee to our country. And we took him and his family in and gave him an opportunity. And there were those on his journey, and he knows who they are. And I'm certain that he and his family have thanked them, who went out of their way to help him. And he took that opportunity and made the absolute most of it. And he's going to go on. He will be, if he's not already, he'll be the best fullback in the world. He's absolutely got everything you need to go on and do everything in the game. And hopefully that includes getting Canada to a World Cup and helping Canada win in a World Cup. And that's where, the current reality is for us. We've got some massive games coming up next weekend. Actually, the next 2 weeks are incredibly important for our men's national team with World Cup qualifying for 2022. And Fonzie's going to be part of that. But there are similarities for sure between Fonzie and Shefki's journey. We talk about this in development a lot, about adversity and actually how you need adversity in your life, and you need to have a supportive environment to overcome that adversity to develop and grow. And a lot of coaches, because part of my role with Canada Soccer now is to oversee the coach education program. A lot of coaches think that just means you make it really difficult for players, but that's not what it is, because you have to have a supportive environment, a safe environment for the players to experience adversity. And when you look at the development of players over the years and you look at the academy system, that's one of the biggest challenges that Brian and the others in the academy system have, is how do we recreate and simulate the stress and strain of playing in the first team and give that to the players in the academy, because it is a bit of a safe, false security world in the academy life. Academy coaches will say this: academy football is not first team football. And it really isn't. I think back to a conversation I had with Scotty Barron when Scott first came into the team as a left back from the academy and played his first game. He had a worldie, an absolute fantastic game. And then the next game he played really well, and everyone was raving about him as being the next great left back for Ipswich Town. And then the third game and the fourth game and the fifth game, and it just got harder and harder and harder. And I took him aside one day at the training ground, had a conversation with him. I said, "How are you feeling?" And he said, it's weird. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, in the academy, when we're playing games, what they're looking at is the performance. They're looking at how you play and how you perform as an individual. They're not so concerned about the result of the game, because it doesn't matter. But at the first team level, it's the complete opposite. The only thing that matters is winning football matches." And that's really hard to wrap your head around. And I said, "Yeah, well, the thing is, if you perform well, you're likely going to win more often than you lose. So the performance still matters for sure. But if Town played terribly every single game, but won every single game and won the league at a canter and got promoted, I don't think anyone would complain. I think people would be relatively happy with that. And it's really only when you're talking about the top levels of success that the style of play has to align to a club's philosophy. And I think we're fortunate with Ipswich in that the style of play at Ipswich has always been entertaining. It certainly was my understanding of it when I came to the club. When I look at the history of the club and I look at the legends of the game who are still at the club, guys like Terry Butcher, Mick Mills, Warkey, still around the club, still part of the fabric of the club, giving back to the fans. It's a huge component of that. So Town has a belief and a philosophy about how the game should be played, and hopefully that's going to be the way that it continues on.
Just talking about Canada there, Jason. Tell us a little bit about John Herdman, because he's the manager for you guys, but from the UK, from the North East, I believe. Made his name with Canada women, and now in charge of the men's senior team.
Yeah, John is the best coach I've ever worked with. And that is really saying something, because again, even just in my time at Town, I worked with Joe Royle and I worked with Jim Magilton, and both were excellent managers. But John Herdman is an exceptional coach. He really is. I try to work with him as often as I can, because it's such an uncomfortable experience for me, because I'm being pushed out of my comfort zone. And I'm having to grow a new skin and learn new skills and become better at what I do when I'm in that environment. But it's never uncomfortable in a negative way. It's uncomfortable in a sense that I know that I'm getting better by being here and pushing myself through this. And I think we're very fortunate to have him. A lot was made when the decision was made to switch John across from the women's head coach to the men's head coach.
Unusual.
I don't think it's ever been done before in football, but my perspective on that was John, the year that the decision was made, the previous year, John won the award in Canada as the best coach in sport, not in football, in all sport, the best coach in the country in all sport.
And you're a hockey nation.
Yeah, no Canadian football manager has ever won that award before, and he fully deserved it. And again, I realize I'm speaking from a privileged position of being behind the curtain, and I get to see a lot of the stuff that goes on and the work that is done. And John is very much at the forefront of that in our country. So. Ultimately what the fans look at though is results on the field, and that's the brutal nature of football, unfortunately. But I think John was given time on the women's side to build a program, and he went back-to-back podiums in the Olympics, which has never been done before in Canada. We'd never won an Olympic medal in football before. John did it twice.
Amazing.
And that World Cup performance as well.
Yeah. I was part of the staff in 2016 in Rio, and I got to experience the whole thing from start to finish. It was an incredible experience. We were sat together in a Starbucks in Brazil, having a coffee while the players were off celebrating as a staff, and the five of us, the 5 tech staff that were there, I just looked around and I said, this is what satisfaction feels like. It really is. It's like you planned this from every training session, the deliberateness of what you've done. Losing to Germany in the semifinal wasn't part of the plan, but to win a bronze medal, to beat Brazil in front of their fans in their own stadium, and to see the women lift another medal, it was incredible, an incredible experience. And I think we're really fortunate to have him in charge of our men's program, because I can only speak from my own experience as of playing for our men's team. I used to think we weren't good enough to qualify for a World Cup, but my mindset has changed about that over the last couple of years. I don't think it's that we weren't good enough. I think it was that we were not professional enough. We weren't prepared well enough. We didn't plan enough. We weren't of the right mindset to be successful in the really, really difficult conditions that you experience in CONCACAF. And I know that my friends in the UK, they look on the team sheet and they go, what do you mean you're playing El Salvador? Come on, you got to win that 5 or 6-0. It's not like that. And Kate, you know, because you've lived in the US and you've seen it firsthand. CONCACAF is a very, very difficult confederation to get out of.
Trinidad and Tobago. That's all I need to say to you.
Yeah.
We're obviously talking about the US missing out on World Cup qualification there.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to go back to your question about John, I think the world of him. I'll do everything I can to help him succeed. And I'll continue to try and go in and learn from him because I genuinely believe in surrounding yourself with smarter people who are better than you are and trying to learn and get better and improve.
Brilliant. Fantastic, that. Really good. I've just been looking at your CONCACAF group: Suriname, Bermuda, Aruba, and the Cayman Islands.
Yeah. So here, let me ask you this question. What do you know about Suriname?
Other than Hullet was and Rijkaard, I think, had their Dutch heritage from there.
Romeo's on the van come from there, Matt. Romeo's on the van come from there.
Maybe. Yeah, could well have been.
Yeah. So who's the current manager of Suriname?
No idea.
Any idea?
Look, Jason, we asked the questions here, okay?
Yeah. You're bamboozling us about CONCACAF.
Kate, I used to work in the media, so I've got this down pat.
Oh, touche.
So here's the thing about Suriname. So Suriname have recently nationalized about 14 players from the Netherlands. So players who were not necessarily good enough to play for the Netherlands, which is a pretty top team in the world, but are certainly playing at a high level in the Netherlands, are now going to be playing for Suriname.
Wow.
So that is a challenging fixture for sure. But I wouldn't want anybody other than John Herdman leading the charge on this right now, because I know the level of preparation that goes into these games. I know the level of detail that goes into getting the players in the right mindset. And I know the caliber of players that we have. You know, the funny thing is when I played many years ago and previous to me, Canada always had a reputation of having outstanding goalkeepers like Craig Forrest and good defenders. And a lot of that was down to the fact that we needed them. In order to get results internationally, we needed to be really well organized, really good defensively, and really strong in goal. And we always had that. I look at our current squad right now, and for one reason or another, we have an absolute wealth of attacking talent that we've never seen before. We've never seen players of the caliber of Alfonso Davies or Jonathan David playing for Canada in the past. And there's others as well who I could name that are just going to be star players. Where we lack depth is actually on the defensive side, which is strange, and it's something that has us scratching our heads a little bit. But I'm excited for next weekend. I'm excited for the games that are coming. The potential of getting to the final round of qualifying and coming up against the likes of Mexico, US. Honduras and what have you. I think that's a test that our players are really going to relish.
So going back to Craig Forrest, he was a teammate of yours.
Yes.
Talk us through the 2000 Gold Cup winning Jason De Vos header.
Well, how long have you got? What I'll say about the 2000 Gold Cup first is it was the best experience of my international life. I just can't even explain what that tournament meant. And it's only afterwards that you really realize how special it was. Craig was unbelievable in that game. I mean, when you I was talking about Kelvin earlier, having the confidence of having a goalkeeper behind you. Craig's the best goalkeeper that I've ever played with. He was absolutely incredible in that tournament. Single-handedly won us games at times, and just stood on his head. It was amazing. And rightfully was awarded the MVP of the tournament and thoroughly deserved it. The 2000 Gold Cup was a remarkable event. I'm not sure if you know the backstory, and I won't bore you with the full details, but we finished tied. The group stage, there were 3 teams in each group, and we finished tied on points because all the games finished in a draw. And so we had to win a coin toss to get through to the knockout stage. And so we did. We have an outstanding record in coin tosses in Canada. So we won the coin toss and got through to the knockout stage. And our reward for getting to the quarterfinals was playing against Mexico. And we don't have a very strong record against Mexico at the senior level. Most nations in CONCACAF don't have a very good record against Mexico. They are by far the strongest team in CONCACAF. So we went into the game with a game plan that we were not going to chase them. We were going to drop off. We were going to defend deep. We were going to hit them on the counterattack, and obviously try to capitalize on set pieces. And so they scored in the first half, I believe, and we didn't change our game plan. We stuck to our guns, and it frustrated them. They expected us to come out of our shell, which creates space in behind for them to play through us and score, 3, 4, 5 goals, whatever they wished. But we didn't do that. And we scored an equalizer in the 82nd minute, I believe. Carlo Corzine, who you may remember his name from playing in England, Plymouth Argyle and Northampton Town, what have you, Cambridge. And Carlo was just in the form of his life. And he won the Golden Boot that year in the tournament. He scored, made it 1-1. And we went to Golden Goal. Remember Golden Goal? Again, I'm dating myself here by talking about all these things. So we went to Golden Goal, and again, we didn't come out of our shell. We're like, look, if we have to take this to penalty kicks, so be it. We're going to do it. But we hit them on the counterattack, and we hit them in transition, and we scored. And Richard Hastings, who played for Inverness, Caledonian Thistle in Scotland for many years, scored the goal of his life, and we beat them 2-1. And Mexico were out; they were shell shocked. We went through to the semifinals, and we were fortunate to get through to semifinals as well, largely because of Craig Forrest, who managed to stand on his head again. And then we played Colombia in the final, and it was in LA, in a massive 100,000 seat stadium. There were 6,000 people there. There was no atmosphere. There were no fans. It was lashing down with rain. Like it was a miserable day in LA, and they didn't want to be there. Tino Asprilla is captain in Colombia, and like I'm shaking his hand before the game, and he's looking around, going, "What are we doing? Why are we here?" They were invited as a guest team, and they'd won through on the other side of the draw. So here we are in the final playing against Colombia. We know that we've already qualified for the Confederations Cup because we're the last CONCACAF nation left in the tournament. So Colombia couldn't represent CONCACAF in the Confederations Cup. So we already know that we've qualified for that. And we just said to the players before the game, look, lads, we've already won. We're already here. Let's just go out and play and have fun and enjoy it. And to this day, I still think it's the best game we've ever played. Certainly the best game I've ever played, I've ever been involved in a national team jersey. We just played with freedom. And I was fortunate enough to score a header off a corner on right before the halftime whistle. It wasn't a powerful header that rocketed into the top corner. If you've seen the goal, I don't think the goalkeeper covered himself in glory. But it was wet and it was miserable, and head it down and head it powerfully and hope for the best. and it crossed the line, and we added a second goal, and we won the game, and Craig stopped the penalty kick, and the rest is history. An anecdote about the Gold Cup, though, that trophy is the heaviest trophy on the planet. It's got to weigh about 150 pounds. So when you see
heavier than the Stanley Cup?
Oh, it's the Stanley Cup is nothing. That's light. The
I'm
Gold
thinking
Cup,
about all the rings.
I think it's made out of iron. It's absolutely ridiculous. So they had multiple people carrying this up onto the stage, and I'm looking at it going, if I got to lift this thing over my head, I'm going to fall off the stage. So I said, hey, Craig, come on. I got Craig up on. So the two of us, and if you've seen the photo, I'm actually holding it like this because it's that heavy, and I'm bracing it with my other hand, and Craig's doing the same on the other side. It was ridiculous, and it's sitting in our head office in Ottawa right now. But the Gold Cup was a special time in Canadian soccer history, and I'm hopeful and very confident that the current group are going to surpass that and are going to get us to the World Cup. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Hope so. Fingers crossed for you. Hope so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we round out the pod on a high. Jason, thank you so much. Thanks for all the laughs, all the great memories. I think if you go back and watch this, you'll see some of the comments, fans begging you to return to Portman Road.
Well, I was back a couple of years ago, and again, like, I think this just speaks to the quality of the club and the quality of the people involved. When I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, it was a wonderful evening. It was unexpected, and truly, I was honored. It was a great evening. I brought both my kids back. They came with us, and it was really funny. Very quickly before we go, so we're walking into Portman Road on match day, and the fans are at the security gates at the front. And so I'm walking in with my two kids, and there must not be that many 6'3" bald Canadians walking around at Portman Road these days, because the fans recognized me right away and came over and wanted autographs. So my two kids are like standing off to the side, like, you know, kind of looking at me like I'm an alien. And then all the security guards are still the same guys that were there when I played 15 years ago. They're still there. They're still part of the club. So I, you know, had a reunion with them. And then I'm walking through the gates, and I'm in the players' car park, and walking there. It's just me and my kids. And my daughter turns to me with a really strange look on her face, and she says, "Dad, you're actually famous?" and I said, "Yes, I am. And you need to remember that. And you need to treat me with a bit of respect." And you can imagine how that went down with my two children. But so it's been a running joke ever since. But the club were amazing. Brian Hamilton specifically was amazing in organizing the Hall of Fame event. Kudos to him. Big Terry and Matt Holland did a very good job of roasting both myself and Herman Ryderson, but it was wonderful. And the club presented my children with jerseys, which again, they didn't have to do, but that's the level they go to make former players feel like part of a family. And that's what makes this club so special, and it's why it's the first result I look for on a match day. And I hope for all the fans listening, I hope that Cookie and the crew bring back the success, bring back the glory days, win promotion, get to the championship, win promotion again, get to the Premier League, and get Town back up where they belong.
Yeah, we hope so. Thank you so much. Just can't thank you enough for giving up your Sunday for us. And
no problem. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks very much, everybody. And hopefully we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thank you. Just a reminder to all the viewers and listeners, support us on Ko-Fi. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube as well, because we're running, well, lads, you say about the shirt thing, because I don't want to muck it up.
Yeah, we've got to 2,500, which was the target before the shirts were released, but they've still not been released. So there's still time to subscribe, and everyone's entered into the draw. We got 2 shirts to give away. I think it was sort of this time, sort of last season, that they were out. So be quick, get your fingers on the buttons, over to Home Dressing Room on YouTube, hit subscribe, and then you're in the draw. And we're back tomorrow night.
Follow us on Twitter, and of course we're available on all podcast platforms throughout the week. Just thanks so much for your participation today. It's the podcast by the fans for the fans. Jason, former Ipswich Town captain, ITFC Hall of Famer, and all-round legend. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.